Hey, what's up, guys? It's Scott Meshy, number 411, and you're listening to the AlwaysMoto podcast.
All right, guys and girls, we are back. Let's jump straight into the emergency department. The emergency department. All the injuries, all the gory details, and when they'll be back on track. It's the list you really don't want to be on. You do not want to be on this list. I keep saying it over and over again, and you do not want to be on the emergency department list. And look, let's keep jumping straight into these injuries here and talking all the things that are going on in the moto scene, and hashtag injuries are a part of moto. Things to note this week that we've brought up. Nate Thrasher's ACL. Now, I posted up the video of his second crash, not the crash with Hunter that we've gone through already with the contractor earlier in the podcast, but the crash that he had when he was trying to come through the field and he was trying to quad near that start-finish line bit. The start gate area there, just as they were going to cross over. And he just, landed off the side of the track, ended up eating shit, basically. But if you notice when he goes to get up from that position, he has a bit of a limp on that right leg as he goes to get up. And I'm telling you now, that's the ACL side, and that hurt him and his leg. And I don't know how long this is going to hang in there. His ACL is obviously not there. He's managing week to week. The team on the coverage is saying that he is only riding once a week, which is a way of managing his load, which is fine. But I can't see how this is going to keep continuing the way it's continuing. At some point, he's going to have a crash or he's going to catch his foot in a rut, and this is all over Red Rover. I don't know if it's going to happen next week, or in 3 months' time, but I'm telling you, it's going to happen. At some point, I fear that Nate isn't going to make the end of the Supercross season. I can't see how this goes in the outdoors. Supercross is a different beast because usually, and obviously we're talking about this right now when we're heading to a week that has lots of ruts at Indy, but usually Supercross doesn't have that many deep ruts, and you can get away with a technique that allows you to keep your feet on the pegs almost at all time because you're not shifting gears so much. The corners are prepped the whole time. You can stand up in the berm, or you can keep your feet on the pegs on the berm because it's a smooth, I say smooth, but you get what I mean. It's a consistent rounded berm. It's a 180 or it's a 90 corner. You're not having a long sweeping one. You're not having a tight rut that you need to turn into like you do on an outdoor track. So he's able to manage that quite well in Supercross, but there is still going to be a time, and maybe it's this weekend with Indy with the extra ruts where he catches it and twists it. But I've definitely been noticing his feet, both feet, are staying on the pegs way more than I would expect him to from his usual technique. So keep an eye on it. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it's just, it's going to happen at some point. And I don't want it to because it means he'll be out for a fair while he gets that repair happening, but it's likely. Another one that's an interesting one for me, Joey Savacci was out at Daytona. Obviously, he's not racing the rest of the season. That was a preemptive plan from his team, Rick Ware Racing, because they didn't have the funding and support to get him through the rest of the season, which is unfortunate for Joey. He's had a really good season going far, pretty consistent, working his way back into that top 10 all the time, which is great, and starting to knock towards that top 5 at times. If things went right, he would definitely be there. And probably by the end of the season, that would have been the case. But he's out. Now, he did have that wrist injury the week before at Arlington, and that kept him out of Daytona. Now, the part that's interesting for me, it's kept him out of Daytona, but midweek there's a picture of him hanging on Twitter, I think it was. He's hanging some picture or a TV mount or something on the wall, using his hands, obviously, to do it with the tools. So obviously the wrist isn't keeping him down too much, just not enough to be able to race. Just an interesting moment for me. Austin Faulkner's vlog this week. I've been watching Austin Faulkner's vlogs. Not massive fan of Austin Faulkner, but I'm just curious to see what he's up to with his recovery and what he's doing with his downtime. He's not racing, he's not riding, he's not practicing, he's training a little bit. And it's just interesting to see some of the things he's been doing. He's been doing cryotherapy. He's been doing hyperbaric chambers. He's been doing some gym training while staying off that injured right knee. It's been interesting to watch. Just keep up with that recovery. But there was one point in that episode that just dropped this last week, and he's doing some forearm exercises, and he's trying to do some supination and pronation activities, and he talks about his previous left arm issue where he injured some nerves, and he now has some muscle wasting in that left forearm. And when he shows the part of his left forearm, the out towards the common extensor, I'm getting stuck. Common extensor origin. Getting stuck on my own words here. I can't tell my own physio stuff. But anyway, it's the CEO, the common extensor origin point on his forearm. That whole point from there down towards his wrist, where the bulk of the muscle belly would normally sit for that forearm extensor muscle, is really wasted away. And he actually talks about how that's been that way for quite some time, and he doesn't expect to get it back. And my knowledge of these sorts of things, no, that's not coming back anytime soon. And then he also speaks about how that's reduced his grip strength, which for me is a bit of a red flag coming up. How is he managing, and is that then impacting the reason that he's crashed these other times? Is his control over the bike reduced because of that reduced grip strength? Now, I have reduced grip strength in my left hand from a previous wrist fracture that was very nasty, and it impacts my ability to do right-hand corners because I can't push down and ulnar deviate my wrist, which is tilt my hand away from me, to push down on the bar correctly. Now, if Austin's got something similar there and just strength reduced, that's going to really impact his position on the bike in particular turns, or even just in a moment where the bike might twitch in terms of a head shake moment. So curious to see how that plays out, but I would be really concerned about how that works for him and him reaching his potential with results in the near future. Maybe when he actually gets some consistent time on the bike, that's not an issue. But when he's returning from injury and he hasn't been on the bike and training those forearms in quite the same manner, that's going to drop off quite a bit. So when he does return to racing, that little issue there where he's got that wasting of the muscle is going to impact him more in those early days back on the bike. So something to keep an eye on with Austin, and if that raises its head later on down the track in his career or not. Dylan Ferranderson is an interesting situation this week for everyone that's been commenting on that crash from press day at Daytona. I'm a little bit interested in everybody's opinion on this one because it's been quite the divided topic. Everyone's saying he came back too soon and that he wasn't ready, and that, fatigue and that miscalculation is all part of post-concussion symptoms. And look, everyone can Google anything these days and come out with all this stuff and point out that the issues that are out there in the world. Is that what happened? You don't know. Is it what happened? I don't know. But let me talk you through this. He's followed what he was supposed to do from the concussion protocol. Yes, I've spoken about the concussion protocol having its limitations, but he did what he was supposed to do. He's followed the protocol. He was out for a few weeks off the bike completely. I think it was 2 weeks off the bike completely, back on the bike on the third week. He was at the race this weekend, which was at the 3 to almost 4 week mark. He's had time as he was expected to do. He's been cleared by the doctor. So what else is he supposed to do for you guys? Would you not go to work if you got cleared by the doctor when you had to, and you weren't going to get paid? I can't hear you. Oh, that's right. You probably would go to work. So you would have followed the doctor's orders, and as soon as the doctor clears you, you would go back to work. So why can't Dylan? Just because he's a professional athlete doesn't make the situation that much different. You might say that I'm wrong in that situation, and that's fine. We can have a discussion about that. But he's followed the protocol that he's supposed to do. He's been cleared by his doctor as he's supposed to do. He is feeling fit and healthy and capable on the bike again, as he would hope to. He's going to go and race, and I don't blame him for it. Until there is something different in place that scans you, blood tests you, helmet sensor like Heltech has that's coming out here very soon that tells you the reading and then gives you a time that you need to be off the bike because of the G-forces that it reads, then he's done everything he can. Until those times those things are available and they're accurately tested and researched and proven to be correct, then he can't do anything different. So I think he was fine. He'll be probably on the track this weekend, as I expect in my notes further down here. He's going to be racing Indy. So what's the difference from him racing this weekend and not last weekend? Is it any different, or do you want him just to sit out? One comment on the post that I made was that he should have sat out all the way to outdoors. That's not till the end of May. As if he's going to sit out for another 2 and a bit months. That's not practical. He's a racer. His livelihood is racing. He can't make any money if he's not racing. Yes, he's on a salary, but he was making money from prize money. Sitting out to outdoors is a ridiculous theory, and it's not going to happen, especially when he's done the protocol as he's supposed to. So we're almost crossing into a little bit of a Dave's diatribe here, but he he's done what he's supposed to do, and I don't see why everybody's getting on his back. He made a mistake on press day that caused another crash, yes, but he was ready to go back to racing. He was cleared by the authorities and by the doctors. It is what it is. He just had another crash. You can't do anything about it at that point. All right, let's move on. Out for the Indy round from injuries that they've sustained at Daytona. We have Jonah Geisling. He got a concussion and fractures to his T1, T4, and first rib. So he's going to be out for probably 6 to 8 weeks, which will potentially spell the end of his Supercross season. He'll probably just take that time to get himself ready for outdoors. Jesse Flock, we're unclear on whether he is out or not, but there is a very interesting sequence of photo shots that he is crashing in at Daytona on his Instagram page. So go and check that out, Jesse Flock 167. We're not sure if he's actually too beat up. He is sore from his post on Instagram, but we haven't got any further info from him direct to say whether he'll be in or out for Indy at this stage. So keep an eye on our Instagram. When we find that out, we'll pass that on. Jordan Jarvis was trying to qualify for Daytona. She was there riding press day, but unfortunately crashed and sprained her elbow. I would think that was probably a week or two for her that she'll be out, and I don't think that she was actually trying to qualify at any other previous events, but just that Daytona one. So we'd expect her to be trying to do some more qualifying at the outdoors here soon in May. Making returns for the race this weekend at Indy. Some interesting ones here. Alex Ray, he's going to be back at 4 weeks post-thumb fracture and even less time on the surgery repair. He was riding at basically 3 weeks post-repair, which is pretty damn quick if you ask me, but he's ready to go, but I wouldn't expect him to be holding onto those bars too tightly. So keep an eye on him. There might be some sketchy moments which would fit his brand, so that would work out perfectly. Alex, good luck, mate, but it's a pretty quick return from racing. Return to riding and even quicker return to racing for you, but I would have probably liked to see maybe 1 or 2 more weeks in that recovery period, but this is supposedly his last season. He's trying to make the most of every round, I guess. Dylan Ferrandis, as we just spoke about, we expect him to be back on track after his Daytona press day crash. Hopefully he gets through A-OK this weekend in Indy. Colt Nichols had a crash at Daytona in qualifying, is beat up. Now, depending on where you're hearing your information, I was listening to the Moto X Pod show. You guys do a good job over there on the Vital MX network now. And they were talking to Lars Lindstrom, and he said that Colt wasn't going to be back. But then when you're listening to the Fantasy Pod with Pulp MX guys, you guys also do a good job too. I quite like your stuff. They were saying that he would be back. So who knows? At this stage, he's a question mark for me. But there are no major injuries there. He is still carrying that groin injury. I would suspect it's still hampering him a little bit from earlier in the season. Maybe he takes the extra week off just to let those things heal up even further and be even back. Hopefully back to more of closer to 100% than he has been because he's just been battling on. Kyle Chisholm also was on that Pulp MX Fantasy Pod this week and was talking about his knee injury that he had before Daytona. Now, that's a bit of a lingering thing. He's aggravated that 2 or 3 weeks earlier. He's re-aggravated in another crash the week before Daytona, and that's what kept him out at Daytona. But he is supposedly going to race this weekend. I don't like how that knee and that tweaking in this that keeps continuing to happen is happening. Obviously, there's something there that's not quite happy, whether it's a meniscus, whether it's just a grade 2, 1 or 2 grading sprain of an MCL ligament. I'm not sure. No details from Kyle as to what, but I don't know if I'd be picking him to go chising at this stage, particularly that he's still hasn't been going super well on that Suzuki just yet. TJ Albright was meant to start racing in the East Coast Supercross when it started in Houston, but managed to get a knee injury right before the week of Houston for the 250s. But after 5 weeks being out, he is back for this weekend for Indy. So good news for TJ Albright. Adam Cincerulo is meant to be back this week after 2 weeks off from his wrist injury. I would love to sit down with AC and find out a bit about what's going on with this wrist of his and where it's connected to, or if it's connected to the ulnar nerve issue, if it's unrelated to that, if it's in relation to him taking off his right wrist brace that he usually wore all of the previous seasons for a number of years that I can remember, but he's taken it off this season. I'd love to know if it's just completely unrelated and I'm spinning shit. I don't know, but I'd love to be able to sit down and talk with AC, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. But maybe we'll get to that when we be able to meet with them and talk to them in person later in the year when we get to a couple of events. So we'll keep that on the bucket list for now to see if we can talk to him. But yeah, I'd love to find out a little bit more. But he's supposedly back, but it's one over jump away from, missing another week or two for AC. So hopefully he can keep it on two wheels. Hopefully he can keep his timing down really nicely, and he doesn't create any more issues to that wrist and or all of the other things that he's had over the last few years. And we can just see him ride out the rest of the Supercross season in one piece. But that's the emergency department for this week heading into Indy. Hopefully you got some information out of that maybe help you with your fantasy league teams or just keep you up to date with what's going on in the world of injuries in moto. Now, we haven't mentioned any of our injury stats recently. We'll bring a bit more of an update on those things in terms of injuries per round, again, probably from next week. We try not to bring in too many numbers every week because it's just a little bit boring at times. Data is data, and it's useful, don't get me wrong, but this is meant to be entertainment too, So yeah, anyway, let's take a quick break here on the show, and we're going to come back with an interview from the number 51. We're on show 51, and we're going to get the number 51 on, and we'll be talking to that Aussie racer shortly.
Hi there, my name is Eldon Baker, and I'm from the Baker's Factory, and you're listening to Always Moto.